My name is Alara Vance, and I am 28 years old. My world has always been the ancient, whispering forests that cradle Oak Haven, my small, misty town nestled deep in the Pacific Northwest. I am not like other people here, who often see the woods as just timber or a backdrop for their lives. For me, the forest is a living, breathing entity, a sanctuary, a source of all inspiration. My hands, calloused and stained with earth, are my tools. I am an artist, a sculptor, creating intricate pieces from the gifts the forest leaves for me. Petrified wood, smoothed river stones, discarded bones, even the occasional piece of twisted metal, reclaimed by moss and time. Each sculpture is a story, a connection to the raw, untamed spirit of this land. My small cottage, tucked away on the edge of the deeper woods, is filled with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, a testament to my singular passion. I sell my work at the Thorn Gallery in town, the only real art space around. Silas Thorn, the gallery owner, is a man who exudes a superficial charm, a booming laugh that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Those eyes, I've always noticed, are perpetually appraising, calculating, never truly seeing the art itself, only its potential value. He has a reputation, whispered behind hands, for being shrewd, for taking advantage, but he was my only avenue. For months, I poured my soul into a new piece, my masterpiece, something I called Heart of the Grove. It was a towering, twisting form crafted from a massive piece of ancient, petrified redwood, intertwined with sun-bleached deer antlers and obsidian-smooth river rocks. It was more than just art. It pulsed with an energy I couldn't explain, a deep resonance with the very essence of the forest. I swear, sometimes it felt like it breathed. It was my legacy, my heart made manifest. Then my world shattered. Silas Thorn, with his greedy eyes and calculating mind, saw not just a sculpture, but an opportunity. He watched me work on Heart of the Grove, praising it excessively, his smile too wide. One frigid morning, I arrived at the gallery to find my masterpiece gone. Silas stood there, not with apology, but with a sickening smugness. He had taken it, claiming it as his own, preparing to unveil it at a prestigious regional art fair, presenting himself as the visionary artist and me as his lowly assistant, a mere apprentice who helped with the heavy lifting. He boasted of how he had guided my raw talent. My protests were met with patronizing smiles and veiled threats. He was connected, powerful in our small town, and he wasted no time in spreading his poisonous narrative. Within weeks, my name was mud. Other galleries, afraid of Silas's influence, refused to even look at my portfolio. My commissions dried up. The whispers followed me everywhere, branding me as unstable, jealous, a bitter fraud trying to steal glory from a respected artist. My sanctuary, my art, my very identity, had been desecrated, stolen by a thief who wore a smile. I was left with nothing but the echoes of my violated art and a cold, burning rage that settled deep in my bones, a rage that felt as ancient and potent as the forest itself. I tried everything I could think of. First, I confronted Silas directly at the gallery, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. He simply leaned back in his plush chair, a smirk playing on his lips, and threatened me with a lawsuit for defamation. He said he had witnesses, reputable art dealers, who could attest to his mentorship and my assistance. It was a lie, a cruel, mocking lie. I then spent weeks gathering every scrap of evidence I had, faded sketches from my notebook, detailed progress photos taken with my old digital camera, even text messages where Silas had explicitly asked me to finish up his piece, twisting his words to make it seem as if I was completing his work. I took it all to a lawyer, a kindly old woman who used to buy my smaller pieces. She looked at my evidence with a sympathetic frown, but her gaze was filled with resignation. Silas had been clever, she explained. He'd had me sign general contractor agreements that were vague enough to give him an out, to claim my work as work for hire. He had also, chillingly, managed to get a temporary restraining order against me, painting me as a deranged, obsessive artist harassing a respected businessman. Each attempt to reclaim what was mine only deepened my despair, pushing me further into an isolating darkness. The few friends I had in the art community, people I thought I could trust, slowly distanced themselves. They either believed Silas's carefully crafted lies or were simply too afraid to cross him. They valued their own reputations, their own careers, more than they valued justice. My savings dwindled to nothing, spent on legal advice that yielded no results. I started selling off smaller, less personal pieces just to buy groceries, but even that well ran dry. I felt utterly alone, an outcast in my own town, haunted by the memory of Heart of the Grove. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that a piece of my spirit, a part of the forest's magic, had been trapped within that sculpture, now corrupted by Silas's greed and deceit. I started to feel a strange, disquieting pull from the deeper woods, not the gentle invitation I was used to, but a more insistent, hungry whisper. An echo of the life I had poured into my art, now distorted, tainted, almost predatory. My hands, once capable of shaping beauty from raw earth, now trembled with an impotent fury that made even holding a chisel feel like a monumental effort. I walked through the forest, seeking solace, but even the ancient trees seemed to sigh with a sorrow that mirrored my own, their shadows growing longer, deeper, filled with unseen eyes. The very air seemed to thicken with unspoken malevolence. My small cottage, once a haven, now felt like a prison, the walls closing in on me. I was behind on my rent, the landlord, usually patient, now giving me stern looks. Foreclosure notices arrived, crisp white papers that felt like death warrants. I was starving, not just for food, but for justice, for a return to the life that had been stolen from me. One moonless night, driven by a desperate need to see my stolen work, I crept through the back alleys to the Thorn Gallery. I used an old spare key I still possessed from my assistant days, my heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, Heart of the Grove stood on its pedestal, bathed in a single spotlight. A new, gleaming brass placard announced its title, Heart of the Grove by Silas Thorn. It looked magnificent, breathtakingly beautiful, but something was terribly wrong. The sculpture, once vibrant with the untamed energy of the forest, now seemed to subtly shift in the dim light. Its petrified wood limbs appeared to twist just slightly when I averted my gaze and looked back. Its bone elements seemed to elongate imperceptibly. The shadows it cast were deeper, darker, more alive than any mere shadow should be. A strange, sickly scent, like damp earth mixed with something decaying, emanated from it, an odor so subtle I knew no casual visitor would notice it. But I did. It clung to the air, a putrid, unsettling perfume. My skin crawled. I realized then that the theft had not simply stolen my art, it had twisted something fundamental within the art itself, a power I had imbued it with but never fully understood. It had become something else, something dangerous. I felt a terrible, cold certainty that all my conventional efforts were useless, that the legal system and polite society would never deliver justice. My despair curdled into something colder, something that resonated with the unsettling whispers of the forest. The forest itself seemed to speak to me now, not with comfort, but with a growing, ancient rage, promising a different kind of justice, a justice born of blood and soil and forgotten magic. I knew then that I needed to step beyond the familiar, beyond the world of humans, into the realm of the wild, the old, the hungry. Driven to the brink, with nothing left to lose, I journeyed into the deepest, most untouched parts of the forest. I sought the hidden groves, places where the veil between worlds felt thin, where the trees stood like silent sentinels to forgotten gods. These were the places where I had found the ancient materials for Heart of the Grove, where the power of the land felt most potent. I carried with me a small bundle of herbs, dried bloodroot and mandrake, and a smooth, black river stone my grandmother had given me years ago, telling me it held the memory of the earth. I wasn't looking for revenge, not consciously. I told myself I sought to reclaim what was mine, to sever Silas's false connection to my art, to free Heart of the Grove from its corrupted state, to cleanse it. I performed an old ritual, not one of vengeance, but of reclaiming, of severance, using the herbs and chanting ancient words my grandmother, a woman wise in the ways of the wild, had whispered to me as a child. Words I'd thought were merely folklore, children's tales. But as the words left my lips, imbued with my absolute despair, my utter violation, and my profound, simmering rage, something shifted. The forest responded, not just to my plea, but to my raw, potent anger. I felt it surge, a cold, dark current through the roots beneath my bare feet. Meanwhile, miles away, Silas Thorn was hosting a private viewing at the Thorn Gallery, showcasing Heart of the Grove to a select group of wealthy collectors, basking in his stolen glory. He stood before my masterpiece, a champagne flute in his hand, regaling them with exaggerated tales of his inspiration and dedication. As I knelt in the forest, chanting the old words, a subtle, chilling transformation began within the gallery. The sculpture, Heart of the Grove, started to move, almost imperceptibly at first. The petrified wood limbs twisted and groaned, emitting faint, splintering sounds that were almost swallowed by the elegant classical music playing softly in the background. The bone elements, once static, began to elongate, to stretch like waking things. The sickly scent, previously faint, intensified, filling the gallery with the heavy, cloying smell of freshly disturbed earth and something else, something animalistic like old blood. Shadows deepened in the corners, not from a lack of light, but from a tangible presence, a growing oppressive weight in the air that made the guests subtly uneasy. They fidgeted, their polite smiles wavering. Ilara, back in the heart of the forest, felt a sudden, electrifying surge of power, cold and ancient, course through her veins. It felt like the forest itself had finally awakened, its slow, patient fury now focused through her. I felt my connection to the stolen art sharpen, not just as a creator, but as a conduit for its vengeance, a living channel for the forest's righteous anger. I sensed the shift in the gallery, the growing terror blossoming among the sophisticated guests. The sculpture came fully, horrifyingly alive. Its twisting form became grotesque, its petrified wood limbs lashing out like whips, the bone elements elongating into razor-sharp talons. Its heart, the core of the ancient redwood, began to pulse with a viscous, black liquid, like stagnant sap or congealed blood, oozing down its sides. The elegant classical music sputtered and died. A chilling silence fell, broken only by the gasps of the horrified guests. Silas, initially frozen in disbelief, finally screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound. The sculpture, now a living, malevolent entity, reached out, its root-like tendrils moving with unnatural speed. They coiled around Silas, pulling him into its embrace. His screams echoed through the gallery, mingling with the terrified shouts of the fleeing guests, as the living wood and bone began to consume him, merging him with the corrupted art he had stolen. The last thing I heard from the depths of the forest was a faint, gurgling sound, a final, wet silence. Days later, the Thorn Gallery was found locked, silent, with no sign of forced entry. The police investigated but found nothing. No body. No real evidence beyond a few overturned champagne flutes and the lingering, unsettling scent of wet earth. Inside, Heart of the Grove stood on its pedestal, restored to its original, breathtaking beauty. It looked exactly as it had before Silas touched it, before he corrupted it. But if you looked closely, if you knew what to look for, you could see a new, subtle detail. A faint, intricate pattern resembling Silas Thorn's face, screaming in silent agony, etched into the grain of the ancient wood, barely perceptible but undeniably there, a permanent, tormented part of the masterpiece. The stench of decay was gone, replaced by the clean, damp, revitalizing scent of the forest after a spring rain. The story became a hushed local legend, whispered behind cupped hands in Oakhaven, the tale of an artist's revenge and a gallery owner who vanished without a trace, consumed by his own greed. Back in my small cottage, now safe from foreclosure, I felt a profound, unnerving quiet settle within me. The hunger for justice, the gnawing rage, was sated. I knew I had crossed a line, unleashed something terrible, something ancient and primal, but a deep sense of justice, a chilling, almost primal satisfaction, settled over me. It was a cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. I began to create art again, pieces that hummed with a strange, undeniable energy, whispering of both the forest's beauty and its terrifying power. People sought me out now, not through galleries, but through hushed rumors, private collectors wanting a piece of the unsettling magic they sensed in my work. I never sold Heart of the Grove. It remained in my studio, a silent sentinel, occasionally shifting, almost imperceptibly, when the moon was full, a constant reminder of the price of betrayal and the potency of forgotten magic. I know the forest is always watching, always listening. One day, while working on a new sculpture, polishing a piece of obsidian until it gleamed, I saw my own reflection. For a moment, my eyes glinted with an ancient emerald light, a fleeting echo of the forest's deep, patient power, a power that now resides irrevocably within me. I am no longer just Ilara Vance, the artist. I am something more, something that walks between the mundane and the wild, a living instrument of the forest's slow, terrible justice. And I find I don't mind it at all.